Emily once believed in the myth of happily ever after. The idea that if two people loved each other enough, if they tried hard enough, the world would somehow bend to keep them together. For a long time it seemed like she had proof. She and Daniel met in college. A sunny afternoon, a spilled coffee, laughter that felt like music. From that moment, life seemed to unfold exactly as it should. Graduation, jobs, marriage, children, a home with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the winter. For 12 years they built a life that looked perfect from the outside. Their friends envied them. Family members whispered about how lucky they were. Even Emily herself sometimes lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, marveling at how everything had fallen into place. But perfect pictures often hide the cracks underneath. At first they were easy to ignore. Daniel started coming home a little later. Meetings, he said. Projects at work running over. Emily believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was a good man. A loyal husband. He had never given her a reason to doubt. And yet a part of her, small, quiet, persistent, felt the change. It showed in the way he no longer lingered at the breakfast table. In the way he checked his phone before greeting her after work. In the way his eyes, once so bright when he looked at her, seemed distant, clouded. Emily told herself it was just life. 2 kids, a mortgage, aging parents, deadlines. Stress could explain a lot. Love didn't always look like the movies. She could live with that. But love, she realized, should not feel like loneliness standing side by side. It was small moments that started stacking up, too many to ignore. Like the night Daniel came home smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. It wasn't strong, barely there, almost deniable. When she asked about it, laughing nervously, he shrugged it off. Probably just someone from work, he said, pulling off his tie and disappearing into the shower. Or the weekend he suddenly had to go to a team-building retreat. He never used to talk about retreats before. And he left in such a hurry, leaving his overnight bag half-zipped, forgetting even to kiss her goodbye properly. Emily spent that weekend cleaning the house from top to bottom, trying to scrub away the feeling that something was slipping through her fingers. The kids noticed too. 6-year-old Olivia asked why Daddy didn't call goodnight like he usually did. 9-year-old Max pretended not to care. But Emily found him curled up in bed with the light still on at midnight. Daniel came back exhausted, saying the trip had been a lot of work. Emily made his favorite dinner, chicken parmesan, roasted potatoes, a bottle of the cheap red wine they used to drink on their anniversary nights. He barely touched his plate. "I'm just tired," he said. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. But when he hugged her goodnight, he didn't hold her quite as tightly. And when she kissed him, she tasted distance. Monday morning, Emily found his laptop open on the kitchen counter. A small thing. Innocent. She wasn't snooping. She told herself that, over and over, even as her eyes scanned the open tabs. Work emails, project spreadsheets, a Google search for how to write a meaningful apology. Her stomach turned. She closed the laptop quickly, pretending she hadn't seen anything. Pretending everything was fine. Denial, she realized, was a powerful drug. The weeks that followed felt like living with a ghost. Daniel was there, physically, eating dinner, mowing the lawn, helping Max with math homework, but emotionally he was somewhere else. Somewhere she couldn't reach. And Emily? She became an expert at pretending. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny. She planned family outings that Daniel canceled last minute. She cried silently in the shower, wiping her eyes quickly before anyone noticed. At night, lying awake beside a man who once made her feel seen and cherished, she wondered what had gone wrong. Had she changed too much after the kids? Had he fallen out of love? Was it another woman? The questions circled endlessly, gnawing at her peace. And yet she said nothing, because to say something would be to make it real. It was a Thursday afternoon when Emily's world truly shifted. She was folding laundry, a simple domestic task, when she heard Daniel's phone buzz on the nightstand. A message preview flashed on the screen, and before she could look away, she saw the words. "Last night was amazing. When can I see you again?" Her heart stopped. For a long moment Emily simply stood there, the half-folded shirt slipping from her hands. The hum of the dryer, the ticking of the old clock on the wall, the sound of her own breathing. It all seemed too loud, too sharp. She picked up the phone with trembling fingers. The message had come from a number she didn't recognize. No name. No context. Just that damning awful sentence. Her mind raced. There had to be a mistake. Maybe it wasn't what it seemed. Maybe it was some cruel prank. But deep down she knew. She had known for a long time. Daniel walked in minutes later, whistling under his breath, setting his briefcase down by the door. Emily watched him from across the room, her heart breaking in slow motion. He smiled at her, that same easy smile that had once made her feel invincible. Hey, Eminencia. Everything okay? For a moment she almost answered yes. Almost smiled back. Almost let it go, tucked the truth away like a loose thread she could ignore. But something inside her snapped. Without a word she held up his phone. His smile faltered. In that instant, before he said a single word, Emily saw everything she needed to see. Guilt, fear, shame, confirmation. The perfect picture of their life shattered in an instant, the cracks too deep to repair. And as Daniel opened his mouth to speak, Emily knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emily stood frozen, Daniel's phone still clutched in her hand. For a second they just stared at each other, the air between them heavy and suffocating. Daniel's face, once so familiar, seemed to shift. No longer her husband, but a stranger wearing his skin. He opened his mouth, struggling for words. I can explain. Explain what? She said, her voice low, almost unfamiliar to her own ears. Explain why another woman is texting you about last night? Daniel stepped forward instinctively, but Emily took a step back, clutching the phone tighter like a shield between them. She didn't want him close. Not yet. Maybe not ever again. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he hadn't done since college. It's not what you think. She almost laughed at the cliché, but the sound caught in her throat, turning into a dry, broken thing. Then tell me, she whispered. Because right now I'm thinking my husband is sleeping with someone else. Daniel looked away, jaw tightening, hands curling into fists at his sides. Fists not of anger but of panic, of shame. Silence filled the room, louder than any words. That was her answer. That night, Daniel slept in the guest room. Emily slept in their bed alone, curled into herself, staring at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, she got the kids ready for school like nothing had happened. She braided Olivia's hair, packed Max's lunch, smiled when she needed to, answered when they called for her. Daniel barely spoke a word. When the door closed behind them and she was finally alone, Emily sank to the kitchen floor, pressing her palms against the cold tile, trying to ground herself. Her whole body trembled. 12 years. 12 years of shared mornings, inside jokes, late-night talks about dreams and fears and stupid things like whether the neighbor's dog needed a haircut. 12 years of building a family, a future. And he threw it away for what? A fling? Some thrill he couldn't get at home? No, it couldn't be just that. She needed to understand. She needed to know how they had gotten here, how she had ended up here, blindsided, betrayed. Later that afternoon, Emily found herself standing outside Daniel's office door. It was cracked open. She could hear him talking softly inside. Against her better judgment she listened. No, she found out. He was saying, voice hoarse. Yeah, I know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. She's hurt. Worse than I thought. I don't even know if there's a way back from this. There was a long pause. Emily imagined the person on the other end offering advice, maybe sympathy. Daniel let out a bitter laugh. I was stupid. I thought it was harmless at first. Just flirting. A little excitement. I didn't mean for it to go that far. Another pause. No, it wasn't just once. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth, swallowing a sob. She had suspected. Deep down she had known. But hearing him say it, hearing the confirmation in his own voice was like being punched in the chest. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Daniel came to her. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, looking smaller than she had ever seen him. His hands hung helplessly at his sides. Emily, he said. Just her name. As if it was a prayer. She turned to face him, her heart hammering. I need you to be honest with me, she said, voice steady even as her body shook. All of it. No half-truths. No excuses. He nodded, eyes glistening. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. It started 6 months ago. He began, voice raw. A woman at work. Her name's Lacey. She made me feel young again. Wanted. Like I wasn't just some boring husband and father. It was stupid. God, it was so stupid. Emily clenched her hands into fists to keep from shaking. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw something. But she forced herself to listen. At first it was just texting. Flirting. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That it was harmless. But then one night after a company party, it just happened. He broke down then, covering his face with his hands. Emily sat there, feeling like she was outside of her own body, watching this awful scene unfold from a distance. How many times? She asked, the words like glass in her throat. Daniel looked up, tears tracking down his face. 5 times. Maybe 6. I lost count. Emily squeezed her eyes shut. 6 times. 6 deliberate betrayals. 6 choices to rip apart the life they had built together. The next few days were a blur. They tried to function for the kids. Emily smiled when she had to. Daniel tried too hard, cracking jokes at the dinner table, offering to help with homework, volunteering for every school event he used to avoid. It was pathetic and heartbreaking. At night, Emily lay awake, her mind racing. Should she leave? Could she stay? Could she ever trust him again? Part of her wanted to pack her bags and run, to protect herself, to protect her heart. But another part, the part that still remembered the boy who spilled coffee on her shoes in college and blushed when he asked her out, whispered that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth fighting for. She didn't know yet which voice would win. All she knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. And she wasn't the only one hiding secrets. Because Daniel wasn't the only one who had crossed a line. And soon, Emily would discover a truth that would shatter what little trust remained between them. For the next 2 weeks, Emily lived in a strange kind of limbo. On the surface, everything continued as before. She woke the kids up for school, packed their lunches, attended PTA meetings, and smiled at the neighbors. She even managed small talk at the grocery store, nodding along as the cashier gushed about weekend plans. But beneath it all, she was unraveling. Every time Daniel's phone buzzed, Emily flinched. Every time he laughed too loudly at something on his computer, she wondered who he was really talking to. Every kiss goodnight felt hollow. Every hug felt foreign. He tried. She could see that. He texted her during the day, brought her coffee at work, offered to cook dinner even though he could barely make toast without burning it. He apologized 100 different ways, sometimes in words, sometimes in actions. And yet, none of it erased the images burned into her mind. Daniel with someone else, Daniel whispering into another woman's ear, Daniel smiling at another woman the way he used to smile at her. Forgiveness was supposed to be simple, wasn't it? You love someone, they hurt you, they apologize, you forgive. Simple. Only it wasn't. Because forgiveness wasn't just a decision. It was 1,000 decisions every single day. And Emily wasn't sure she had the strength to keep making them. One rainy Thursday afternoon, while the kids were at a friend's house, Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at Daniel's laptop. It wasn't locked. She hadn't gone through his things before. She hated the idea of spying, of digging, of confirming what she already knew. But the temptation gnawed at her. Maybe if she understood everything, she could find a way to heal. Or maybe she would find something that made leaving easier. Her hand hovered over the mouse. Then before she could change her mind, she clicked open his email. At first it was all work, spreadsheets, project updates, corporate jargon she barely understood. And then she saw it. A folder labeled personal. Inside were dozens of messages. Most were old, months ago, even a year back. Flirtatious exchanges with Lacey. Plans to meet. Inside jokes that made Emily's stomach turn. But that wasn't what stopped her cold. Buried between the emails was a thread from a name she recognized. Megan Price. Emily's breath caught. Megan was an old friend. A woman Daniel had once worked with briefly years before. Emily had met her at a company party. Tall, polished, a little too friendly. But Daniel had always insisted there was nothing between them. Curious, and dreading what she might find, Emily opened the thread. The messages were older, almost 4 years ago. And what she read made her world tilt. Megan. I still think about that night sometimes. Do you? Daniel, I do. Wish things could have been different. Megan. If only you hadn't gotten married so young. We could have been something, Daniel. Maybe in another life. There were no explicit admissions.
No dates.
No confessions of meetings. But the tone was unmistakable. Intimate, regretful, unfinished. 4 years ago. Long before Lacey. Long before Emily had suspected anything. A second betrayal, hidden under years of lies and half-truths. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It wasn't just a midlife crisis. Daniel had been lying to her for years. Cheating not just physically but emotionally. Building secret connections behind her back while she planned their family vacations and stayed up late nursing their babies. A fresh wave of nausea rolled through her. She had been living in a fairy tale stitched together by her own hope and Daniel's half-truths. That night, Emily sat across from him at the dinner table, pushing peas around her plate, watching him laugh at something Max said. How many times had he looked at her like that and thought about someone else? How many anniversaries had they celebrated while he held on to other women in his heart? When the kids went to bed, she confronted him. Quietly. Without theatrics. Without screaming. Just the two of them sitting in the living room, a chasm between them. She told him what she found. Daniel went pale. His hands shook as he reached for her, but she pulled away. I loved you, she said, her voice breaking. I believed you. And all this time you were building lives with other women in your head. In your messages. In your lies. Daniel sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. It was never serious, he mumbled. With Megan it was just words. I swear. Nothing ever happened between us. Emily stared at him, numb. Words are sometimes worse. Because words were promises. Words were possibilities. Words were betrayals just the same. After that night, things shifted again. Not just tension. Something colder. Harder. Emily stopped trying to fill the silence between them. She stopped pretending everything was fine. She went through the motions for the kids, but inside she was pulling away brick by brick, building a wall Daniel couldn't scale. He noticed. Of course he did. He tried harder. Therapy appointments, long heartfelt letters, tearful confessions about how much he loved her, how stupid he had been, how he would spend the rest of his life making it up to her. And a part of Emily wanted to believe him. But another part, the smarter, sadder part, wondered if love was enough when trust was already dead. One afternoon, while cleaning out the closet, Emily found an old photo album. Their honeymoon. Pictures of them on the beach, tanned and laughing, arms wrapped tightly around each other. A life that felt like it belonged to strangers now. As she flipped through the pages, a folded note slipped out from between the photos. It was a letter. A letter Daniel had written to her once, years ago, and never given her. In it, he talked about his fears of growing old, of losing excitement, of not being enough. Emily read it twice, her heart breaking anew. Maybe Daniel hadn't just betrayed her. Maybe he had been running from himself all along. And maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the only one who had been hiding. Because Emily had her own guilt too. Something she had buried so deep she almost forgot it was there. Something that would soon come back to the surface, threatening to destroy what little was left of their marriage. Emily stared at the photo of herself and Daniel on their honeymoon. Both of them sunburned, grinning, arms around each other like they didn't have a care in the world. For a moment, she didn't even recognize herself. That version of her was so young, so certain of things. She had no idea how fragile everything was. No idea that love could fade without warning. That betrayal could come from the man who once held her while she cried over her father's death. She closed the album and sat still for a long time. The letter Daniel had written still in her lap. There had been a time, maybe years ago, when Emily could have forgiven him easily. Back when the first cracks showed. Before the lies stacked so high they blocked out the sun. But now? Now she didn't know if there was anything left between them that hadn't been touched by dishonesty. And the worst part? She wasn't innocent either. Not in the same way Daniel wasn't, not physically. But emotionally, there was something she had buried. Something she had never told him. Something that came rushing back now with brutal clarity. It happened 2 years ago, when things had first begun to cool between her and Daniel, long before she ever suspected him of cheating. Back then, Emily had been lonely. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly alone. Daniel was always working late. The kids were little, and she spent most of her time managing chaos, wiping tears, packing lunches. No one really saw her anymore. Not as a woman. Not even as a person sometimes. Just a role mother, wife, scheduler of dentist appointments, planner of meals. Then came Ethan. He was one of the other parents at Olivia's school. Widowed. Kind. A little too easy to talk to. They started chatting during drop-off, then during school events, and eventually, over coffee after the kids' music recitals. Nothing happened. Nothing physical. But there were conversations. Long, thoughtful, sometimes deeply personal conversations. She found herself looking forward to them, laughing in ways she hadn't laughed in months, remembering what it felt like to be seen. She never told Daniel. She told herself it didn't matter, that it was harmless. But she remembered the way Ethan looked at her once when they parted after a PTA meeting. That long pause. That almost something in his eyes. And she remembered the way her heart fluttered. Nothing ever happened, but something almost did. And for the first time since discovering Daniel's affair, she wondered if that moment, that spark of temptation, had somehow opened a door between them. A silent, unspoken betrayal neither of them ever addressed. Emily sat in the dark that night, sipping cold tea and thinking about all the things they never said to each other. When Daniel came downstairs, he looked surprised to see her still awake. "I thought you were sleeping," he said. She shook her head. He sat across from her, and for once there was no tension. Just quiet. Tired quiet. "There's something I never told you," she said. He looked up, startled. "I never cheated," she said quickly. "Not physically. But there was someone. A man I met through school stuff. 2 years ago." Daniel said nothing. His face stayed still, unreadable. "We talked. Had coffee. I don't even know if he liked me that way, but I liked how I felt when I was around him. Seen. Alive. I looked forward to seeing him, and I didn't tell you. I let it happen." Daniel stared down at the floor. Emily waited. Finally, he looked up. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we keep pretending the problem started with your affair. But maybe it started before that. Maybe we both got lost somewhere along the way." Daniel rubbed his face, sighing. "I wanted to blame you for everything," she continued. "But the truth is, we both stopped trying." He nodded slowly. "Yeah, we did." In the days that followed, something shifted. Not reconciliation. Not yet. But honesty. For the first time in years, they stopped pretending. Emily told him what she needed: space, truth, time. Daniel gave her passwords to everything, set up therapy without her asking, showed up at every school event, every dinner. It wasn't perfect. Sometimes she still woke up angry. Sometimes she hated the way he hummed in the shower like nothing had changed. But other times she caught herself smiling when he helped Max build a volcano for science class. Or when he quietly left notes on the fridge telling her to have a good day. He didn't beg. He didn't grovel. He just stayed. Present. Steady. And for the first time since the affair, she started to believe he might really want to fix what he broke. But then came the real blow. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon. The doorbell rang. Daniel answered it. Emily was in the hallway and froze when she heard the voice. A woman. Young. Nervous. "Hi. Sorry to come like this. I know I probably shouldn't be here, but..." "Lacey." Daniel's voice was tight. Emily stepped into the room before she could stop herself. Lacey turned to face her, tall red hair pulled back in a loose bun, holding a coat soaked in rain. Daniel moved between them quickly. "Lacey, what are you doing here?" I needed to talk to you," she said, eyes flicking to Emily. And to her. Emily didn't say a word. Just stared. "I'm not here to ruin anything," Lacey said softly. I needed to say I'm sorry. I didn't know you were going to try to fix things. I didn't know she was still here." "She's my wife," Daniel said sharply. "I know that now," Lacey said, her voice shaking. Emily's heart pounded. The woman her husband had betrayed her with was standing in her living room, apologizing. It was surreal. "I ended it months ago," Lacey said. "I blocked his number. He never chased me. I saw your photos online and it hit me what I helped destroy. I wanted you to know I never meant to be part of that." Emily swallowed hard. "You were part of that," she said. "Whether you meant to or not." Lacey's eyes filled with tears. I know. I'm sorry. Emily didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded. And Lacey left without another word. That night, Emily sat alone in the backyard, listening to the rain. Daniel joined her quietly, sitting beside her in the dark. I didn't know she was going to come, he said. I believe you, Emily whispered. Silence settled between them again. Finally, she asked, if I had never found that text, would you have told me? Daniel didn't answer right away. He stared out into the dark yard, breathing carefully. I want to say yes, he said finally. But I honestly don't know. Emily closed her eyes. Honest. Finally. Horribly honest. She didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if they'd make it. But she did know one thing. The lies were gone. And now they had to live with the truth, whatever that meant. The real question now was whether truth alone could rebuild what betrayal had shattered. Because sometimes even honesty isn't enough. Sometimes something bigger has to happen to shake you awake. And it was coming. Neither of them knew it yet. But a final test, one more reckoning, was about to knock on their door. And it would change everything. 2 weeks after Lacey showed up, Emily sat in the car outside her therapist's office, staring at the dashboard as the rain painted slow streaks across the windshield. She was numb. Therapy had helped a little. It gave her words for things she hadn't been able to name before. Words like emotional abandonment and attachment wounds and resentment fatigue. Words that made her feel less crazy for being so tired. For feeling like she was walking on glass in her own home. Daniel had been going too. Separately. And with her once a week. He was trying. More than he ever had. But there were days when Emily looked at him and saw nothing but the wreckage. Like staring at a burned house and trying to imagine what it looked like before the fire. And that final question still haunted her. Would he have told her the truth if he hadn't been caught? That silence, his hesitation, rang louder than all the apologies combined. It wasn't just the affair. It was the choice. Repeated, intentional and hidden. And now they were both living inside the consequences. At home things had stabilized. At least on the surface. Daniel got the kids ready for school most mornings. He took over grocery runs. He stopped going out late, stopped glancing at his phone when it buzzed. For the first time in years he was present. But not all presence could erase absence. And Emily wasn't sure what she was anymore: wife, mother, survivor? A woman healing? Or a woman lying to herself because staying felt easier than walking away? She hadn't decided yet. Some nights she slept in their bed. Other nights on the couch. Daniel never pressured her. He waited patiently, always one step behind, unsure how close he was allowed to get. It was the strangest kind of grief, mourning a marriage that hadn't ended, just changed shape. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope. No return address. Emily almost tossed it in the recycling, thinking it was junk mail. But when she saw her full name written in blue ink, not printed, she opened it. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. And with the first few lines, her blood turned to ice. You don't know me. But I think you deserve the truth. What your husband told you isn't the full story. I was there. I saw it. And I think it's only fair you know what really happened. There was no signature. Just details. Specific ones. Things Daniel hadn't told her. Apparently, Lacey hadn't been the only woman. There had been one other briefly a year before that. A conference in Denver. A night Daniel said he'd spent in his hotel room alone. But this letter said otherwise. Emily's hand shook as she read. There was no proof. Just a name she didn't recognize and a vivid recollection of seeing Daniel at a bar with a woman. Hands touching, leaving together. Could have been a lie. Could have been nothing. But her gut twisted. Because somewhere inside she knew it was real. That night she confronted Daniel again. He was in the kitchen washing dishes. The kids were upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the dishwasher and the slow creak of the floor under her steps. She handed him the letter. He read it slowly, then again, then lowered it with a face gone pale. Is it true? She asked. Daniel stared at the countertop for a long time, then nodded. Emily felt her knees go weak. She braced herself on the edge of the table. Who was she? I don't even remember her name, he said hoarsely. It was one night. Stupid. I was drunk. I hated myself after. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me, Emily snapped. Daniel's face crumpled. I didn't tell you because I was scared it would ruin any chance we had left. She laughed bitterly. You think not telling me gave us a better chance? He didn't answer. That night, Emily packed a small bag and left. She didn't tell him how long she'd be gone. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just left. She stayed at her sister's house on the other side of town. Her sister, who had always warned her that Daniel was too charming, too smooth, too used to getting his way. But even her sister didn't gloat. She simply offered a glass of wine and a bed, and said nothing when Emily broke down at the kitchen table at midnight. For 3 days, Emily didn't answer Daniel's calls. On the 4th day, she opened her inbox to find a video file from him. She almost deleted it. But curiosity won. She clicked play. It was Daniel sitting on their back porch. No music.
No fancy lighting.
Just him, raw and unshaven, eyes tired. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I don't deserve it. And I know that. But I needed to say this. He paused, then continued. I was broken. Not because of you. Because of me. I thought I could fill the emptiness with other people. With distractions. But all I did was dig a deeper hole. And I dragged you into it. I dragged our family into it. I will regret that for the rest of my life. He swallowed hard. I don't know if you'll come back. I don't know if you should. But I want you to know, I'm not going to stop trying. Even if I never earn your trust again. Even if I spend the rest of my life loving you from a distance. The video ended. Emily sat there for a long time staring at the screen. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just felt empty. But somewhere in that emptiness was the echo of something else. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the start of something different. That weekend she returned home. Daniel didn't say a word when she walked through the door. He just nodded and stepped aside, letting her pass. She didn't unpack. She didn't promise anything. But she stayed. They sat at the table that night, across from each other, the kids between them. And something small, barely visible, passed between them. A look. A breath. The first step in something they would both have to rebuild piece by broken piece. But the journey wasn't over. One more truth still waited. One neither of them expected. And when it came, it would force Emily to face the deepest question of all. Could she ever truly love him again? Not the man he pretended to be. But the flawed, broken man he was now. Emily stayed. Not because everything was forgiven. Not because the pain had disappeared. But because she wasn't ready to walk away just yet. There were still moments when she looked at Daniel and felt sick to her stomach. Still nights when she woke up from dreams of him with other women and couldn't breathe. Still days when she caught him looking at her and wondered how much of it was guilt and how much was love. But there was also this. He was trying. For real this time. No more grand gestures. No more half-baked speeches. Just steady day-by-day effort. He did the work. He showed up. He let her feel everything she needed to feel, even the rage, even the distance. And he never once asked her to hurry. They went to couples therapy every Thursday night. First it was hard. Brutally honest. Ugly. Emily found herself yelling in sessions, sobbing on the way home. But she also found space. A space to say things she'd buried for years. Not just about the affairs, but about the loneliness long before them. Daniel took it. He didn't get defensive. He didn't shut down. He took it, and in that quiet strength, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. A man who finally understood what he'd destroyed. And who was willing to do the hard work to fix it. 2 months after she moved back in, something strange happened. Emily got a message on Facebook. From a woman named Ally Harper. The name didn't ring a bell. The message was short. Hi, I know this is weird, but I think we might need to talk. It's about Daniel. Emily stared at the screen. Her first instinct was to block it. Delete it. Burn her phone if she had to. But something about the message felt different. Not threatening. Not vengeful. Just honest. Against her better judgment, she replied. Why? The answer came a minute later. I think he's my father. Emily's world tilted. She read the message over and over again, unsure if she was reading it wrong. She called Daniel into the room and handed him the phone without a word. His face drained of color. He sat down slowly like the floor had suddenly shifted. Then he whispered, "Oh my God. What is this?" Emily asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "I think she's telling the truth," Daniel said quietly. "There was a girl. Years before I met you. In college. I didn't know she was pregnant. She never told me." Emily blinked. "You're saying you might have a daughter?" He nodded, stunned. In the weeks that followed, everything changed again. DNA tests. Emails. A call from Ally's mother confirming the timeline. It was all real. Ally was 21. A junior at a state university, studying psychology. She didn't want money. She didn't want drama. She just wanted answers. And maybe, if he was willing, a connection. Emily sat silently as Daniel talked to her on the phone for the first time. She watched him break down in tears afterward. "This was my fault," he said. "All of it. I didn't know. But if I had, maybe I would have been a better man." Emily didn't respond right away. Because part of her felt something she hadn't expected to feel, relief. Not because of Ally, but because Daniel was finally completely exposed. No more secrets. No more lies. No more carefully curated version of himself. Just him. Flawed. Humbled. Trying. They invited Ally over for dinner. Emily wasn't sure how she would feel. Meeting a living, breathing reminder of a past she didn't know existed. But Ally was kind. Smart. Warm. She didn't carry resentment. Just curiosity and quiet hope. The kids liked her instantly. And watching Daniel, nervous, fumbling, terrified, try to earn his daughter's trust brought Emily to tears. Not because it was sad. Because it was real. For the first time in their marriage, Daniel wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing. He was just a man trying to clean up the wreckage of his own life. 6 months passed. And slowly something began to shift between them. Not a sudden fix. Not a miracle.